that with the new government, we'll be able to align immigration numbers with housing policies. There needs to be a plan in order to ensure that BC communities have the necessary growth for new homes so that we can welcome the newcomers into Canada.
Now, Prime Minister Mark Carney has promised to build nearly 500,000 new homes per year, while the country is expected to admit about 395,000 permanent residents this year. Now, Mandewo says she hopes there will be enough infrastructure in place to support new homes being built. And a coroner's inquest into the death of a UVic student heard the 911 call placed as 18-year-old Sydney McIntyre Starko was suffering a fatal fentanyl overdose last year. Now, the call runs almost 16 minutes, and information that drugs might be a factor is only revealed 13 minutes into the call, at which the 911 operator instructs campus security to administer Narcan. Now, the inquest heard that by that time it was too late for McIntyre Starko. Her mother has publicly criticized UVic's response to her daughter's death, and the inquest continues into next week. And that's it for now. I am Jessica Chung, and you are watching CBC News BC. Stay tuned for more continuous local coverage. Don't go anywhere because BC Today is up next. Good afternoon. Thank you for joining us. BC's Filipino community is still reeling from the weekend's tragedy at the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival in Vancouver. And now there are calls for more mental health resources. Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim said today BC's mental health crisis has become, quote, a public safety crisis. We'll hear more about what he had to say, and we'll speak with a forensic psychiatrist. After 12:30, we'll check in with a local Filipino youth who's organizing community response. And we're asking you on the open line, do you know someone who was affected by the tragedy? And are you organizing any supports you'd like us to know about? I'm Michelle Elliott. Welcome to BC Today. Now, as we begin this conversation, I'd like to warn you, we are talking about traumatic events from Saturday's incidents at the Lapu-Lapu Day Street Festival in Vancouver. 11 people were killed, multiple others injured, when the driver of a black SUV allegedly struck a crowd. 30-year-old Kai G. Adam Low has been charged with 8 counts of second-degree murder. Vancouver police said Low had a significant history of interactions with police and healthcare professionals, and Vancouver Coastal Health say he had had numerous interactions and confirmed that the alleged driver, was under the care of a mental health team on extended leave. They said there was no indication he was not following their treatment plan or that he presented a public safety risk. There are questions remaining about the safety measures taken for the festival and about the care that Lowe received. Premier David Eby said, pending the criminal case, he would like his government to launch an independent commission and public inquiry. And this morning, Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim announced something similar, and he blamed the province and the federal government for gaps in mental health care. CBC reporter Chad Pawson was at the news conference and joins me now. Hi, Chad.
Yeah, hi, Michelle.
What did Mayor Ken Sim have to say?
Yeah, so I think the important thing is there's some big thematic events coming out of this news conference. One, Ken Sim, like all people, wants to find some kind of answers, if there are answers, to this horrible tragedy and what happened. So the city is, of course, doing its own inquiry. They're looking at public safety. They're looking at permitting. They're looking at the way that these events are held in Vancouver, with results in about 2 weeks, he said today. So that was a big part of the news conference. He also talked about how and was asked how this event could affect future events in Vancouver. With seeing, I think there's about 1,000 protests a year in Vancouver, about 2,000 permanent events in Vancouver. So lots and lots of public events happening in this city. And then the third big theme, which is something that Ken Sim has been talking about since he was elected, was unmet mental health needs in this city and what resources are needed to make sure that people's needs are being met so that mental health crises don't become public safety crises. And here he is speaking about being asked about the inquiry that the city is going to be doing, and also one that the province is going to be doing. And as you mentioned, maybe even a public inquiry depending the outcome of the criminal investigation.
How many more times do we have to study this? So sure, come up with another commission, come up with another report. They're important, but let's come up with action now. I think we're all tired. And look, I'm sorry, I'm probably going to get in trouble for this, but I'm just speaking from the heart. Not as mayor, but as a resident of Vancouver, as a citizen, as a father, as a family member, as a neighbor, as a friend. Like I look at the list here, like just, I've seen in the news, Richard, Lynn, Katie, 3 individuals, a family of 4, left an orphan son. How many more reports do we have to do to come up for a reason why their family is absolutely devastated? We need action.
So Michelle, what Ken Sim's asking for action is he's asking for more resources, more funding, more programming for unmet mental health needs in the province. And of course, that is a provincial responsibility. And this has been an ongoing ask. Bail reform, all these things that Ken Sim thinks would help our city be a safer place and help get people what they need. He went at length today listing off the things the city has tried to do. Of course, he ran on a platform of hiring more police, hiring more mental health nurses. And some of those things have been put in place, but really, again, calling out the province, saying that we don't have an equal partner here, and we need more funding and we need more things to be done in that vein. So that was a big part of the news conference this morning.
Okay. And so digging more into those themes that you were talking about, what about the future of festivals in Vancouver?
I mean, it's a really interesting question because Ken Sim at this news conference faced quite a few questions about it. I rattled off the numbers there, the number of events that we see in Vancouver any year, and they are numerous. And there already is work that is done. There was work done at this festival to see what the risk assessment was and what the response should be toward that. And over the course of time, we've seen big changes to events. We've seen events that have big dump trucks put in place to avoid any kind of vehicles coming through. We have garbage cans that are cut holes in them and transparent garbage bags put in them so we can see. So there's already so many things that are happening. And the takeaway here today is what more could be done. Can the city adequately assess every risk of every public place, a beach, a restaurant patio, a festival, of course, and adequately protect residents from something that may be nebulous and very hard to put a finger on, something that's going to happen? It's a horrible problem that we're facing, and it's a horrible job that the city has to try and do to try and think about safety at these events. And ultimately, Ken Sim talked about there just may be fewer events. So, I mean, it's not a good outcome to say that, are we potentially living in a more dangerous place, and that the end result is fewer events and festivals and gatherings in public spaces.
And I can speak to the organizers and people in the Filipino community really feeling that this festival was so important. It was a second annual festival, the Lapu-Lapu Day festival that had been held the last year was very successful. This year appeared to be even bigger, and so there were a lot of worries about what this might mean for that festival moving forward. And when it comes to mental health, Chad, we need to be clear here. And Vancouver Police Interim Chief Steve Rye reiterated as well this morning that the vast majority of people with mental illness are not violent. They did talk, though, about those cases that we have heard about, public attacks, as Mayor Ken Sim said, involving mental health crises. So this is something that he's talked about numerous times, right?
Yeah, and he of course made references to previous attacks. With 3 people randomly stabbed in Chinatown in 2023 with someone who was on a day pass from a forensic psychiatry center. Of course, very near to us here across the street, a man was killed. Another man was attacked and had a hand severed by someone who was in the criminal justice system, who had had multiple criminal interactions with police. This is all part of the discussion that is going on now. Again, there's so many outstanding questions here about how a person is involved in the mental health system, but also the criminal system, or maybe one or not the other, and how assessments take place. What Ken Sim really wants is he wants the province to step up. And I didn't hear today step up with more inquiries and investigations, but step up with resources to make sure there's adequate beds and that there is involuntary care and that there is reforms to the bail system, which is, of course, a federal responsibility, and the province is calling for this as well. And it's so how do we find the perfect fit for unmet needs? There's just so many questions right now. Families thinking about they have a loved ones who is in trouble. We've been having conversations around the newsroom and with people that we interview about, asking for someone to be committed or something. That is a huge undertaking by a family, having to want to have the family member put in institutionalized. It's easy to say maybe that's the best place for somebody, but the actual process of doing that is extremely complicated and would be very difficult for families. So this is trying to make sense of these horrible tragedies is just so difficult because they have so many things that come into play with them. But, there's an ongoing theme here of unmet mental health needs and the resources needed to try to meet some of those, try to overcome what people aren't having their needs met. And I think that's what Ken Sim is asking for. And, we are hopeful that, David Eby and the provincial government will respond more to that rather than Ken Sim being critical of yet another inquiry.
There's the political side of it, too, which will follow. Chad, thank you so much.
Thanks, Michelle.
That's CBC reporter Chad Pawson. You can let us know as well whether you think there does need to be change when it comes to BC's mental health care system. You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. There is, of course, criminal proceedings taking place with regard to this case, so we won't be speaking specifically to it. And the Vancouver police have also said that while the alleged driver had interactions with police before that he was not arrested or detained because the interaction was not criminal in nature. Okay, so taking your calls, what do you think needs to change about BC's mental health care system? And joining me now is Dr. Gary Chaimowitz. He's a professor. Chaimowitz. He's a professor of psychiatry at McMaster University and a forensic psychiatrist and the past president as well of the Canadian Psychiatric Association. Good afternoon, doctor.
Good afternoon.
What goes through your mind hearing about this tragedy that's being called the darkest day in Vancouver's history?
Right. So the first thing that goes through my mind is expressing my condolences and sympathies to the victims, their families, and everybody else affected by this absolutely awful tragedy. As you said, this is a very dark day. It was a very dark day. And I think that's a major part of what we need to think about as we begin to examine what happened.
And what are the questions that are raised in your mind when you hear about multiple interactions, but there was no indication that it was escalating to violence, that the alleged driver had been participating and cooperating with their treatment?
and this alleged outcome. What thoughts go through your mind?
So of course, violence is unfortunately part of our lives, perhaps unfortunately more part of our lives than historically. We don't know a lot about the person who was arrested. People have spoken about mental health, but lots of people are working with mental health. 1 in 5 Canadians have been having their mental health addressed, usually with family doctors or other therapists. So it's hard to speculate too much about what might have happened in this case.
Absolutely.
And I think the other thing that one needs to sort of bear in mind is that there is a ton of discrimination and stigma attached to mental illness. And to remember that the vast majority of violence is not committed by people who have mental illnesses, but people who are of a history of violence, where drugs, which is another scourge of our society, contributes to violence. In fact, people with major mental illnesses are usually victims of violence. When you take out the substance use, people with mental illnesses, their risk of violence approximates the general population. So I think those are some important things to bear in mind as we begin to unpack what happened recently.
And when it comes to gaps in the current mental health care system, what do you see as those gaps where people are not getting the resources and help that they need?
Right. So first of all, I'll talk a little bit about that because that is a great question. It may or may not link with the individual they've arrested.
That's right.
So we do know that we just don't have enough resources. This is a pan-Canadian issue. It's not just BC, only British Columbia and Vancouver. There are just not enough resources for people with major mental illnesses. In fact, I would say there are not enough resources for the average Ontarian, British Columbian. People don't have access to family physicians in ways that they should. We don't have enough resources for people. There are people where housing is a major issue. So we have people who are homeless, cannot afford basic housing, cannot afford basic resources. We have substance abuse, which is unchecked. And until we address some of those issues, it's going to be really difficult to be able to say that we have enough of what we need for people with healthcare issues and certainly people who may have mental health issues.
My guest is Dr. Gary Chaimowitz, professor of psychiatry at McMaster University, a forensic psychiatrist and past president of the Canadian Psychiatric Association. And we are having the overall broader discussion around mental health care in BC, a call from Mayor Ken Sim this morning to increase resources, saying this is a provincial responsibility and federal responsibility to provide those mental health care resources. And he was speaking in the wake of the tragic events at the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival in Vancouver on the weekend. We're asking you overall, what needs to change about BC's healthcare system? And if you'd like to participate, it's 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Chelsea is calling us from North Vancouver. Hi, Chelsea. Welcome.
Hi. Thank you so much. Thank you.
What do you think needs to change about mental health care?
Well, a lot. And it needs to be everybody stands up together, because I had something else to say at the beginning, but now I just heard the last part of your conversation with that great gentleman, and it made me just want to say, yeah, but everybody says that something needs to be done. It's going to be done. It needs to be done. Nothing's been done. Since I was 12 years old. I'm 42 years old now. I've been sick with mental health and just been totally the worst life ever, dealing with trying to get better. And as I lay here in bed 5 years straight, and I mean straight, 5 years straight since my fiance took his life, now I'm even sicker with mental health. and I've laid here for 5 years and can't walk anymore. And I need someone to come here. I need someone to, I don't know, except for that I need love. And I don't need to be, crawling into a drugstore to pick up my meds and everybody just slamming the door in my face, not looking at me in the eyeballs, and just ignoring me. I would just like to be loved just like everybody else. And I think that it just needs to happen. I just hear all this for years. Oh, something needs to be done. But let's all do it together.
And Chelsea,
If
when
we
you
all do
say,
it together, it'll help.
are you at home or are you in a care facility?
At home, I can only rent now. I used to rent a 2-bedroom on the water in West Van and had a great career helping people with Alzheimer's. And now I'm in a single room of a house that I rent in North Van, and it's just debilitating. And the whole place is dilapidating or whatever, just falling apart around me. Rats, mice. It's all I can afford because there's no housing either.
And
So,
you've gotten really to the stigma that you face. Like that's what you've described.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
The stigma I face is so detrimental on my self-esteem and my heart and my soul when somebody won't look at me in the eye or just slams the door on me or just walks in front of me or laughs at me, or it's just so sad. It's so sad.
And what are the
and I know that.
Yeah, what is a service that you need then? What is where's the gap that you're not
I don't know, Miss, because I know that I've been through them all. I've victim services, everything, CVAP, Crime Victim Assistance Program, a bunch of things, BC Housing and stuff like that. I'm trying to get in there.
Yeah.
But I don't know. There's got to be some miracle wand that needs to be waved.
And I'm sorry, Chelsea, to interrupt, but I'm guessing you don't have a family practitioner.
Of course I do.
You have a family
That's
doctor.
the thing.
Okay.
I could walk down the street on good days and everybody would think I'm the most normal, perfect girl in the world. And everybody wants to be my friend and love me. And I have a practitioner, a GP, and everything's fine with that. But yet there needs to be more. I need psychologists.
Okay.
Psychologists are not free.
There's that as well. Chelsea, I'm so sorry that, my goodness, you've been struggling with this for decades.
But I still laugh. I'm still a good girl and still try to be happy, right?
Yeah.
That's why I find it so hard to believe that I've been shunned into this corner.
Yeah.
But the mental health resources I think we need are definitely addiction care. Like, I've had, 5 friends die from addiction in the last 10 days. Okay. And I'm not in an addiction anymore, but they were, and they died. 5 friends. Okay.
Chelsea,
so they need addiction care and stuff like that.
There's that as well. Chelsea, thank you so much. I'd love to put your question around. Okay, it sounds like you do have a GP, but you're having trouble accessing psychologists, so that costs money. I have a couple of minutes, Dr. Chaimowitz. She talked to the stigma that you touched on earlier as well, but this is the impact of not getting the care you need, being confined to your home and to your bed.
All right. So your caller in, touches on things that affect so many people in Canada and definitely in British Columbia. If you don't have access to care, be it psychiatry, psychology, family physicians, housing, affordable housing, access to addiction services, you can see things begin to fall apart. We do need reinvestment. I know people have been calling for this for years. Our population in this country has expanded dramatically over the last several years. I think we were tight with resources before. I think we're tighter now. So this is, unfortunately, an opportunity to revisit the space and ensure that we have access to care that's timely, that's appropriate, and addresses the needs of people in British Columbia and around the country. And I think your speaker talks to all of those things.
Yeah. In a very personal way. So thank you very much for the call. And you talked about housing, and Clayton says about the high cost of rent and buildings as well. So thank you very much, Clayton. The issue of housing. My guest, we were talking about the gaps in mental health care. Dr. Gary Chaimowitz is my guest, the past president of the Canadian Psychiatric Association, professor of psychiatry at McMaster University. This is BC Today. I'm Michelle Elliott. And Dr. Chaimowitz, here in BC, there's been an expansion of beds for involuntary care, and this is kind of where this conversation goes. In this particular case, the alleged driver here, the Vancouver Coastal Health says there was no indication that they needed to be put in involuntary care. Can you tell us overall, because this has been an ongoing conversation here in BC, it came up today as well with the mayor, what does that actually look like? What goes into being confined into involuntary care? And is there, in fact, a need for more of it?
So thank you for that question. And I know this question has been topical. So there's a social contract that we have. We as Canadians have rights to move freely and act freely in certain circumstances. And there are circumstances where you pose a risk to yourself or a risk to others or can't look after yourselves. The state, or in this case, the province, has created laws, mental health laws, which allow you to be detained against your will if you pose a risk to yourself, others, or can't look after yourself. Implicit in that is this idea that if you're being detained against your will, we as a society need to have ways of getting you well so you can again regain your place in society. And that includes treatment for whatever illnesses that may impact you. So the laws are there. That we hope people use the laws appropriately, and we hope that there are enough beds. Everybody's aware that people are jammed in emergency rooms in ways that perhaps other countries don't see. So when people are jammed in emergency rooms, it often means that there are not enough beds and not enough resources. So involuntary treatment is available. It's part of our society's social contract where at least the state will look after ourselves, or the province will look after me, for instance, if I become unwell. But implicit in that is to get me well. That includes access to treatment, appropriate access to housing and services. So that's very much part of our society here in Canada. But do we have enough resources? Do we have enough beds? Do we have access to those beds? Or the barriers too great? That is a good question that we as a society need to ask ourselves and answer.
Dr. Chaimowitz, it's very good to speak with you. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you.
That was, bye-bye, Dr. Gary Chaimowitz, professor of psychiatry at McMaster University, a forensic psychiatrist and past president of the Canadian Psychiatric Association. He joined us from Hamilton, Ontario. It is 12:30 now. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Thanks so much for being with us for this conversation. We're going to pause right now for a CBC News update, and here's Rob Zimmerman.
Good afternoon. Family and friends have identified Jennifer Darbalay as one of the 11 people killed in the alleged attack at Vancouver's Lapu-Lapu Day Festival on Saturday. Speaking at a vigil last night, Noel Johansson said his wife was behind him when she died. Johansson, who was using crutches, said his physical injury does not compare to the heartache of losing his wife. Calling it a failure of the mental health care system, Vancouver Mayor Ken Sim says the federal and provincial governments need to do more to address severe mental health issues in the wake of the tragedy. Sim says the expansion of involuntary care and more treatment beds in BC are needed. And Williams Lake has set aside $100,000 to increase RCMP patrols in the city as part of an effort to reduce crime. This was one of the actions put forward by council last week after an emergency meeting on public safety. And now the forecast on the north coast, increasing cloudiness this afternoon with a high of 11, highs around 16 with lots of sunshine in the Peace. In the central interior, including Prince George, mainly sunny with a high of 16 as well. Highs from 18 to 23 and mainly sunny in the Kootenays. In the southern interior, including Kelowna, mainly sunny with a high of 21. And for Metro Vancouver, Greater Victoria and the Fraser Valley, lots of sunshine this afternoon with highs from 15 to 19 inland. That's your CBC News update from Vancouver.
Rob, thank you very much. That's Rob Zimmerman in the CBC Vancouver newsroom. Welcome back. You're with BC Today here on CBC. I'm Michelle Elliott. Very good to be with you this afternoon. We have some more calls now on the question of what needs to change about BC's mental health system. And Bernadette is on the line in Sydney. Hi, Bernadette.
Hi, Michelle. How are you?
I am fine, thank you.
Yeah, sorry. Condolences to a community that is never in the news for anything but the good they do. And Michelle, I just want to say that I don't think that criminal charges should be laid against this person, because this was a breakdown, as a result of a mental illness.
My apologies, Bernadette. Let's just focus on the system, okay? My apologies. I just want to stay away from the criminal proceedings of this case.
Yes. No, that's what I'm saying, Michelle, that I think it's important, like in this situation, I heard that, and I support the mayor in what he said, but I think that the family had reached out for help, and for some reason they didn't get it, and then this ended up with this person being involved in this horrendous event. But, when people have schizophrenia and stuff like that, if they don't take their meds, their behavior can deteriorate, their condition can deteriorate very, very quickly.
And we don't know what his condition was or is. Yeah.
No, we don't. But, so I would like to say that, it's good to listen when families call in, because they're closest to the situation, and they can, they know the situation when it deteriorates, that they need help. So, basically, that's kind of what I want to say, and I'm not being critical or anything, but I think that the mental health situation in Canada needs upgrading to help people like this, and we need safe, supported places for them, which we had in the past, Michelle, and no longer have, like Riverview and places like that.
Bernadette, thank you so much for the call from Sydney. Shannon is on the line from Souk now. Hi, Shannon.
Hi. So I'm all for involuntary care. I have to say, 2 years ago, my 88-year-old father was arrested on some criminal charges, and he was taken from his home early in the morning, brought to a center, and he's been there for almost 2 years. But he had undiagnosed dementia, so what he did was due to his dementia. So he's still locked up. But now he's no threat to anyone. He's in a wheelchair. He's incontinent. He can barely have a conversation. But they continue to keep him locked up. So I just don't understand why some people who commit, murders or repeated break-ins or all these things can get out so easily. Can you enlighten me?
And of course, you're talking about in general, right? Not any specific case.
No, in general.
Yeah.
And why more people aren't put in involuntary care when someone who's no longer a threat, who will never be a threat, is still locked up.
Do you have any other, routes that you can take when it comes to your father?
No, he's under the non-criminally responsible review board. So until they stay his charges or whatever, and it's been a huge waste of resources. I mean, there's psychologists, forensic psychiatrists, nurses all involved in this, and it's just, to me, it's mind-boggling. A year ago it should have changed, but for some reason they keep banging this drum, and my dad could be released and there would be a free bed. So there's certainly something wrong with the system.
Well, I can hear that it's been very hard for him and for you as well, Shannon.
Yeah. So are there any answers?
Yeah, I certainly don't have those answers, but that is part of the discussion that we're having here, whether that is needed and in what cases. Shannon, thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your thoughts and your story.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for letting me. Bye.
Bye-bye. Charlene is our last caller now from Main Island. Hi, Charlene.
Hi. I guess I want to say that I agree with your guest from McMaster in many ways, and I'm frustrated that these problems get blamed on either a level of government or a particular party. It's really our problem. It's on us. Are we prepared to pay not just millions but billions to provide mental health services, detox centers, doctors, nurses, housing, childcare, job support, staff and facilities, social workers, mediators, police, probation officers, prisons, lawyers, judges? That an effective and comprehensive approach to this would demand. I mean, hell, we scream at a guy peeing on the sidewalk, and then people turn around and scream at their local officials for raising their property taxes a couple of $100. You can't have it both ways. If you fall for somebody who promises 3-word tax breaks, you're not going to get the response to these problems that is required. If you really want to solve it, you've got to put the money in.
Infusion of funding. Charlene, thank you for the call from Main Island, and thank you so much for all of your calls on this issue. Again, we'll continue to cover this story, of course, and you can still email us your thoughts, bctoday@cbc.ca. It's 12:38 now. You're with BC Today. And a lot more on the day's top stories coming up on the afternoon shows in your region. In Metro Vancouver, On the Coast is speaking to more elected MPs from last Monday's election. Here's Gloria Makarenko.
Hi there, Michelle. It's Gloria Makarenko here, and I hope you can join us for On the Coast this afternoon. We have a lot more post-election coverage. We'll meet more newly elected MPs, including Jake Sawatsky. So Jake Sawatsky is the 20-something UBC graduate who ran with the Liberals and has just unseated longtime New West NDP MP Peter Julian. Also, with music education on the chopping block as school districts need to balance their budgets, we are going to hear from someone who runs a nonprofit after-school music program. Juno-nominated jazz musician and composer Jody Prosnick is going to be our guest. So I hope you can join us between 3 and 6 for On the Coast.
Thank you very much, Gloria. That's Gloria Makarenko and On the Coast. And we'll bring you lots of coverage here on BC Today as well throughout the week on the election. And in a couple of minutes, we'll talk about resources that have been made available. People have been organizing and rallying together in the wake of the tragedy this weekend in Vancouver. So we're going to hear from an organizer. Really, it's come together very, very quickly. And we'll ask you as well, have you been stepping up? Have you been organizing some kind of support for someone you know or friends or those who have been affected? We've heard from them. You can give us a call, 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. Well, across the country, Filipino communities, alongside those who stand in solidarity with them, are holding vigils and tributes to the victims of the Lapu-Lapu Day tragedy. Communities have rallied together to support those affected. More than $1.5 million were raised, and blood donation appointments filled up this week in Vancouver. Tonight, students will gather at UBC to show their support. Maya Fernando is a co-organizer and the finance officer of the student group Sulong UBC, and she did attend the Lapu-Lapu Day Festival. She spoke to Gloria Makarenko and On the Coast.
I was kind of worried because it was a fire truck. I turned to the person I was with, and we were kind of wondering if a mishap had happened with one of the food trucks, but then more and more vehicles and just like you can't hear anything but sirens, and just confusion and shock settled in. And I remember hearing from somebody in the bus lineup the phrase in Tagalog. They're saying many people have died. And I just remember hearing that and feeling my heart sink. It was, yeah.
I'm sorry that you have to relive some of that. How have you been doing over the past few days?
It's been a lot to process, but just like Jam said, being united and leaning on each other in this time is so important, and that's why, like, despite the tragic circumstances, it has been healing. It has been healing to co-organize this with so many others in the community, and not just other Filipino students, but members of other organizations, other people who are just wanting to show their support. It has been really, really, truly touching.
Well, groups and organizations have stepped up to show support, and Filipino groups are rallying together to gather resources. You can call us now. Do you know someone who's been affected? And how have you or your organization been supporting people who were affected? You can call us 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can also email bctoday@cbc.ca. Wyn Ramos Daquigan is organizing with the Vancouver Filipino Emergency Coalition. Hi, Wyn.
Hi, Michelle. Thank you for having me today.
Well, I really appreciate your joining us. Thank you for your time. What has this week been like for you?
Yeah, it's been a difficult week. Difficult is probably not even the word. We haven't much had sleep. But at the same time, we are very thankful that we are receiving a lot of collective care from one another as well.
Tell me about that, because this group came about very quickly. And I know people even on Saturday were messaging each other and put together an ad hoc website. They were sending me texts, and a chef I know was just putting the word out there. I'm going to go to hospitals right now. Can someone help? Can you tell me about how this has all come together?
Yeah, so most of our organizers within our team either attended the festival or at least know someone who attended the festival. And some of us weren't there, and those who weren't there were able to maybe process it a bit faster, or we were just making sure that, oh my gosh, we don't know the details yet, but it is serious. From what we've seen, it's serious. People will be needing supports. People will be needing counseling. There will be a lot of folks who are facing trauma. And with that, because this, it's also important to understand that we organizers have really good connection with our community. So knowing who to ask, where to ask, and we have a really nice network of folks who, when you say, hey, I need help, someone for sure will be there and help us.
That speaks to how close the community is to begin with.
Yes.
Yeah. And I know you were not able to attend the festival. You had other plans. Mm-hmm. I was there until 8 p.m. And, when I think about it, I had the most wonderful afternoon time there. And I still have images of the joy, right? Just people dancing in the street and eating delicious food and meeting, just community building. And when I think about what happened just minutes after, I mean, it just, it breaks my heart. And you said that people will need help. There's a lot of trauma there for people who did witness it. Can you tell me about that need?
Yes, so when the incident happened, I personally also know friends who were there, and they were just posting pictures of them in the same spot before the incident happened. And some of them, when the news broke, I was messaging friends, hey, are you okay? Hey, are you okay? And most of them didn't know what happened because they just left maybe 5 minutes ago. And with that, we already know that, hey, I get a respond, and they say, oh, I didn't know that this has happened. I'm clearly in shock right now. Folks who are there that has left early are in shock. And when you're in shock, you clearly need counseling supports, or at least any support for your well-being. Everyone is being anxious and very worried on what has been happening. And so the first instinct was for us to ask, hey, are there any counselors who are able to take in folks who, and for like free or at least low cost, because we will be needing this. And we've been seeing this need in this past few days and most likely in the coming days as well.
Yeah.
And so we are now organizing healing circles. We are now organizing spaces where there will be counselors and therapists who are volunteering their time to be with us and to process this grief and this tragedy.
Yeah. Well, let's take a call now, asking you, and what are the supports that you've seen come up with regard to the supports that are needed by the families of victims and witnesses when it comes to the tragedy on Saturday in Vancouver? Love to hear from you. I know I've been hearing from different groups saying this, this Sikh organization is gathering funds or food to help this organization, restaurants, and so you can let us know if there's something that you've been involved with as well. 1-800-825-5950, 604-669-3733. You can hit pound 690 on your cell phone. Ruth is calling us from Salmon Arm. Hello there, Ruth.
Hi. I'm not directly connected with the Lapu-Lapu Festival, but I just wanted to make a comment. Until the mentally ill individual drove into the crowd, the Lapu-Lapu Festival had been a huge success with perfect weather. The festival bringing joy and enjoyment to approximately 100,000 people. And I feel like that was bringing people together, and what wonderful therapy to offer to help the mental health of tens of thousands of people in Vancouver. And I'm just really, really hoping this incident does not cause organizers to cancel the festival. Festivals like these are community building and do so much good for the well-being of city dwellers. That's all I wanted to say.
Yeah, Ruth, thank you very much. There is that feeling of coming together, and you see the support that's around you. I mean, what kind of what are the benefits of a festival like this that you can tell us about, Wyn?
Yeah, well, again, we have a very vibrant Filipino culture. This festival is a way for us to connect with one another, to learn more about our culture. It is in itself already a nice healing circle. Depending on, it doesn't matter if you are coming into the space as a migrant worker or folks who has been in Vancouver for a long time, or you're new, or if you don't even know the language or can't speak the language yet. It is just a space for us to come together to share our culture, be with one another. And in Filipino, we have a word called pakikipagkapwa. And it is also tied with pakikiramay, which is sharing each other's sorrow and being with one another, carrying this burden. And whether it's in this tragedy on what happened, we are doing pakikiramay. When we are in the festivals, we are doing pakikipagkapwa, which is being with one another's presence. And I think that is very important, that we have these spaces, that we have spaces to celebrate our culture.
What has it been like for you? And one thing I noticed as well was there were people there from all backgrounds, and
Yes.
it was a sense of pride that I had to say, oh, yes, please try this dish or that dish. And that was the pakikipagkapwa that you're talking about, bringing people in
Yes.
to the community. And so I'm getting the sense of that now as well, because there have been these supports and vigils being announced and everything like that. How does it feel for you to see that coming from organizations and groups around you?
That is very overwhelming support. We are very thankful and grateful. I think it is also an opportunity for us to accept, to help. We always say Filipinos are very resilient, and that is true. But at the same time, being resilient means that we are letting our community carry the burden that we are carrying at the moment, because it's heavy. And we welcome all the support and help from other community members. And again, this is pakikiramay, and this is sharing our sorrow together. And it is also important to remember that this tragedy does not only affect the Filipino community, but all of Vancouver, BC.
Yeah, and across Canada as well.
Yes, yes.
What are the resources then that people can access?
Yeah, so right now in our website, we have resources for counseling. We also have resources for all of our events, or events that are happening within the community from all grassroots organizations or organizers. So we have vigils as well on our website, the dates of the vigils, the time, all from Vancouver and across Canada.
And when it comes to funding, I know you said people have been volunteering and donating, but do you have any concerns about being able to keep this up? Do you have enough funds?
Well, we are not accepting any funds. So we're operating in a grassroots level. So this is basically us just volunteering our time. We are not accepting any monetary donation. We would have to we received support, so requests or at least offer for supports. We are reviewing that right now. Right now, we just want to make sure that these resources are out. I think we are still, this tragedy, it's very new to us still. And the most important thing for us right now is to have these resources out already, because we want to take care of one another, and we don't want anyone to not have these resources now that they need it the most. So maybe in the coming days, we will have a meeting on if we decide to take in any monetary funding or anything. But right now, again, our focus is making sure that our community is supported right now.
Wyn, I hope that you are taking care of yourself as well. Thank you so much for your time.
Yes, thank you.
Wyn Ramos Daquigan is organizing with the Vancouver Filipino Emergency Coalition. And a memorial for the victims of the vehicle ramming at Vancouver's Lapu-Lapu Festival is growing, and so is that community support. Again, more than $1 million has been raised for victims so far. John Hernandez now has this report.
I came here just to throw my emotion and throw my tears down.
Chris Nadalo is seeing this memorial for the first time. He was here 3 days earlier at the Lapu-Lapu Festival, walking just meters away from where the vehicle rammed through the crowd.
It was terrifying because people are screaming and they're asking for help. It was so sad for me. That's why I came back, and the past 2 nights I don't have sleep enough.
His return here, a chance to mourn and heal.
My birthday is turning tomorrow as well, so I was so lucky and thankful to God that He gave me another life. I know this is the first time that it happened, but it builds us stronger as a community.
11 people are dead following the horrific crash. On Tuesday, more details on the victims confirmed by their families and officials. Vancouverite Alexander Samper confirmed his mother, Glitza Maria Casedo, his father, Daniel Samper, and his sister, Glitza Daniela Samper, were killed. More than a dozen people are still in hospital.
Of the 7 people in critical condition, 2 are women, 5 are men, and they range in age from 29 to 66.
A 22-month-old is among the 3 people in serious condition. Online fundraisers have raised more than $1 million for victims and their families in 3 days. Meanwhile, BC's Premier vows an independent commission will look into keeping future public events safe. He says a public inquiry into the background of alleged attacker Kai G. Adam Low is also on the table.
I would like to do it today, but we are restricted in doing that. because there is a significant risk of compromising the criminal investigation and prosecution. I think this individual is a mass murderer. I think he should be prosecuted to the full extent of the law.
Lowe is charged with 8 counts of first-degree murder. Police say the investigation will be long. Still, officers expect to reopen this stretch of Fraser Street in the coming days, giving this memorial more space to grow. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
That's a CBC's John Hernandez. Thank you, John. And this morning, Ken Sim, Vancouver's mayor, also announced a public internal investigation into the matter as well. And he also called for more resources for mental health. We have this email. If Ken Sim wants to help with mental health outcomes, he can restore construction of new supportive housing. Housing may or may not have been a factor for the person in this current tragedy. We know secure housing is one of the biggest determinants of mental wellness. Thank you. BC Today at cbc.ca.